Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this, let's say, gathering. Or, yeah, you're welcome, especially. Okay. Yes, I need to switch to my presentation. Okay. All right. Today I want to talk about shareholders agreement. I will start by a very brief introduction to the business structures in Canada. Then I will move on to what a shareholder agreement is and how helpful it can be, what areas it will cover, and what pitfalls it's going to avoid. So, anybody is familiar with this logo of Ontario and what it is? سلام 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 جلسه رو به هم ریختیم. اونجا میتونید بشینید، اینجا میتونید بشینید. آخر زن و شوهر از هم جدا نشن. So this logo of Ontario, I just learned it after 6 years in Canada. It's the trillium. It's a flower which is native to Ontario. So it's used officially as the logo of Ontario. There's also another one. It's called coat of arms. So it's a very interesting kind of thing. It's a symbol of Ontario. There is the Canadian goose. There is the what is it? The antelope or moose? Yeah, it's sorry. The Canadian moose and the deer, and this is the black beaver, I believe, and this is the jack's arm, which is the British sign and logo, and this is the maples, 3 maples. So all together they make up the Ontario. Yeah, not a very pleasant province to be in, huh? Some people are proud of it, but I don't see many people being proud of Ontario. Whatever. So when we're talking about this topic, I just want to clarify that, first of all, these are not legal advice. So if you have a legal problem, you need to consult a lawyer. And second of all, this topic is exclusively about the law in Ontario. So the law in other provinces could be different. If you have a federal corporation and you're doing business across the country, it could be different. So you're going to be exposed to several legal systems. So Canada is a federal country. Legal systems are not coherent. They're different. In some provinces, they might be differences, especially in Quebec. The legal system is vastly different with other provinces. So we have 3 types or structures to conduct your business in Canada, in Ontario. Sole proprietorship, which means a person is doing his business alone. Imagine somebody opens, I don't know, a pizza shop, and they're doing their business. They have a business name written on the door, but it's not a very big deal. So the person is liable to all the debts and problems that occur in the business, and everything in that business is for the owner. So there is no separate legal entity. There is no separate legal capacity for the business. It's the person, it's the owner. Second is partnership. So from this moment onward, we're going to have a partner, a shareholder, somebody else comes in. So we have 2 owners or co-owners. Okay, the fine line that you can draw between sole and the other types of business is that there could be other people. Especially in partnership, we have 2 or more people doing business. Again, this could be registered, may not be registered, but bottom line, it's not a separate legal entity. That's the point. And corporation, we like to call it company in Iran. Usually we translate shirkat as company, but yeah, they call it corporation here. So I could see some questions coming from my peers and friends. What is the difference between a company and corporation? None. Corporation is the name they call it here. Okay. So let's start by partnership. Yeah. So we have 3 different types of partnerships. I'm going to briefly describe them because they are not the main topic here. General partnership is the type of partnership that does not need any registration. It occurs the minute you start your business. So no registration is needed, and we have the concept of joint and several liability. You may ask what it is. We call it مسئولیت تضامنی in Persian. It means that everyone is liable to the fullest extent. So let's say my friend and I are doing business, and the business incurs 100K of debt. I have to pay the 100K. My friend has to pay the 100K too. But whoever pays first, the other one is absolved, doesn't have to pay. We may go between us, we may fight between us. I can go to the friend and say, you have to pay me 50K because it's paid the 100K in full. That's between us. But any third party who wants to claim against the partnership can get whatever amount in full from either me or my friend. That is the concept of joint and several liability. I knew it could be interesting. That's why I put it here. So we have also limited partnerships. It means that there are two types of partners. One is general, the other is a limited partner. But the general partner can be the manager of the partnership. Okay? And this has to be registered, there has to be documentation to that effect. So those partners who are general partners are called managers, and they have unlimited liability. So again, the full 100K has to be paid to the creditors. But for limited partners, they should not get involved in the management, and they can limit their liability to the amount of their investment. Okay? It's pretty confusing and complex, I know, but be aware, if you're doing business with a friend or an associate, it's called partnership. If you do not register it, if you do not incorporate the business, if you just open a shop and you're doing your business together on a very casual and friendly basis, that's called partnership. And that is a general partnership, and you're both liable for all debts. You can come one level down and register that partnership. One of you could be a limited partner, the other should be the general partner, and that is how it works, unless you decide to incorporate the business. We also have limited liability partnership. They call it LLP. So this one is usually gone by LP. This one is LLP. But this is only available to professionals like lawyers, accountants, medical doctors, anyone who is regulated by a regulatory body, provided that regulatory body allows that. So you may see a lot of law firms in Bay Street going by LLP. That was a very old structure, and it remains. They're somehow proud of that system because they say, you know what, there is ultimately one person liable for everything. So that kind of liability thing is important. There are also some tax differences between LLP and a corporation. I leave it to your accountant to explain to you. I may touch on a bit. But the bottom line is that no partner is liable for the acts or negligence of other partners. So if there's a law firm, or I don't know, an accounting firm, 3 or 5 accountants are working there. So each one is liable for their own conduct, not for others. That is the concept of LLP. But it's only available to professionals, not for general business. All right, I don't want to waste any more of your time. I'm going to dig into the main topic, corporations. So we have several types of corporations. One is a business corporation. For Ontario, we have Ontario Business Corporations Act, which is the dominant regulatory scheme. For federal, we have Canada Business Corporations Act. So if you're doing research about acts or laws, you have to be careful. Is this the provincial law or is this the federal law? And if it's the provincial law, if it's for Ontario. So business corporations are two types, public or private. Private means مثل سهامی خاص یا مسئولیت محدود. Sorry. Public means سهامی عام. So any corporation that is offering its shares in the stock market, it's public. Otherwise, it's private. Bingo. And we don't have that type of classification between private corporations. There's only one type of corporation, and if it's offering shares in the stock market, it's a public corporation. Otherwise, it's private. You may see some words attaching to the name of the corporation like Inc., Corp., Ltd., whatever. No difference at all. It's just a preference. It's a taste. It doesn't convey any legal meaning. There is no legal meaning attached to the last part of the name you choose. We also have cooperative corporations, which is somehow different from a business corporation. Well, in a cooperative, which is ta'awuni, usually are used for a group of members who have the same goal and benefits. It's not incorporated for gaining benefits. It's incorporated to do some sort of group benefit for everyone or to attain a goal, okay? Not our thingy here. Usually when you go to your accountant, you want to reduce your tax exposures, the accountant advice will be go and incorporate one corporation, and they mean this private one, nothing else. Okay, what a corporation means. First of all, everyone knows independent legal capacity. That's a separate entity from myself. In Iran and other countries, you need more than two people or more than one person, 2 or 3 or more, to incorporate a corporation. But here in Canada, in Ontario, even one person can incorporate the business or can incorporate a corporation, and that corporation is a separate entity. Second, it can do any kind of business. What does it mean? There is no scope. Again, that thing that we have in our country that section 2 of the articles has to define the scope. No, in Ontario, even in federal jurisdiction, we do not define the scope of the corporation. It can do any type of business. It can import, export, provide services, do trades, production, manufacturing, anything. I had a professor who used to say it cannot marry or have children. So there is no restriction on the scope of business that a corporation can do. Third, assets of the corporation belong to itself. So if we have a business, and I want to read this together, no liability for shareholders. So bottom line, if you have a corporation and if the business incurs any debts or liabilities, you're not on the hook. You're good. The creditors can go to the corporation, can claim whatever demands they have. They may get what they're seeking, they may not. At the end of the day, the corporation can go bankrupt. But again, your assets are safe, okay? There are only 2 exceptions to that. Either gross negligence or abuse of trust, which is a very complex situation. Usually, let's say 80%, 70% of times, a shareholder is not liable for the corporation's debts or liabilities. That's the type of news you want to hear. And separate taxes. So we have, and this is not good news, this is bad news. So you'll have 2 layers of taxes. So imagine I have a corporation, everyone else has a corporation, I know. That corporation has a profit at the end of the year. Let's say, I don't know, 100K, 50K, whatever. So it has to pay 12.5%, I guess. Yeah, for small businesses, it's 12.5. 12.5% of the total profit to CRA to show that it's a good boy. And then whatever amount that you have withdrawn from your corporation is your personal taxes. So we have 2 layers of taxes. So if you pay your taxes in your corporation, doesn't mean that everything is done. You still have to pay for your personal taxes, which is on a bracket basis. So if if you have only one source of income, which is your corporation, you take 50, 60, whatever, you have to pay, again, your personal taxes to the government. But this could be somehow good because it gives you a shelter. If you had a good year, you made a lot of income, you want to keep some of the money in the corporation so you can withdraw it from the next January. Okay? Sometimes people don't want to go to the upper bracket. They want to slow down the taxes so they can keep the money in the corporation, wait for January 1st when their fiscal year ends, so they can withdraw again. It gives you a little bit of cushion against higher tax exposures for your personal taxes. But again, 2 layers of taxes. Okay. Yeah, that I covered before. We have federal corporations, provincial corporations. However, I want to say this. In federal scheme, there is a law that says 25% of the directors should be Canadian, either PR or citizen. So if you are on a work permit, if you're not a PR or citizen of Canada, and if you want to incorporate a business, it cannot be federally. Or you can find a friend or family who helps you in the process. That means they become a director in the corporation. Do they have to be a shareholder as well? No, just be a member of the board. So in federal, we have an old law, which is supposed to be changed, but who knows when. But in Ontario, Alberta, Nova Scotia, British Columbia, we don't have that requirement. But other provinces still require, also the federal still require that some members of the board of directors be Canadian.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
Through the registration of the corporation, the acts, the scope, what the main area you want to involve, right? And then you're saying you can involve in any kind of business.
Yeah.
Just want to know.
That's a statistical question. There's no legal ramification or consequence for that question.
Company, for example, doing one can easily switch another business.
There's no switching. As I said, it says what is the main business activity. The question is what is the main, and that is only used for statistical purposes, not for legal purposes. As I said, a corporation can engage in any type of business. Yeah, you're right. In the form, it's the form 1 asks the main business activity, but that's not important. You can put anything, and nobody's going to come after you. Shareholders versus directors. So a shareholder is a sahamdar, is a co-owner of the business. But a director is uzve hayat mudire. So anybody who becomes a shareholder doesn't mean that they're involved in the management. Maybe all or some of the shareholders or even non-shareholders can become a director. So a director is a person who is a member of the board of directors. So they owe the company a fiduciary duty. تعهد امانی دارن. So they have been entrusted certain things. Sorry if I translate some items into Persian. So they owe the company a fiduciary duty. That means everything in their hand is in trust. So it's not their own personal belonging. So if you have a partner, if you have a shareholder, and you're a director in the corporation, of course you have signing authority in the bank. You may make some transactions. But you have to be aware that whatever you're doing with the corporate assets, whatever contracts you're signing, whatever, decisions you're making in the course of that business, it's on a fiduciary duty. So you cannot take everything and go and say, yeah, I had the signing authority, so be it. No. The shareholder can come and say, wait a minute, you were trusted and you broke that trust. So you are liable. Okay? So better thing to do is always for the directors is to consult the shareholders in their important decisions. If they want to sell a vehicle of the corporation, it's better to get their approval so that they cannot later claim the fiduciary duty. Okay? We have the same things everywhere in the world. Usually the board of directors is entrusted, but has to consult the shareholders whenever there is some big issue. There's nothing else I want to say here. Yeah, powers of shareholders. So as I said, the shareholders are the co-owners of the business. Of course, directors have the power to run the business, to manage the business, but they're liable and kind of responsible against shareholders. One more thing I want to say here is that we usually have the item that in our country we have a board of directors, then we have the managing director, mudir amel. We don't have that notion here. So any director can sign on behalf of the corporation. So that we don't have a managing director or a vice president or things like that. They have such names, but these are just names. There is no legal meaning attached to that. So if you're doing business with your partner and he says, I want to be the president, okay, be. As long as I am a director, you're a director, we both have signing authority. So every director can bind the corporation, regardless of their position in the board, they can sign. Okay, power of shareholders. Voting in the meetings, very easy to understand. Shareholders gather together, 5, 6, 10, whatever, and they vote on the basis of the votes that they have. So basis is shares. If I own 10% and my friend owns 60%, yeah, his vote is 6 times larger than mine. That's fine. Remove or change directors. So at the end of the day, the directors can be removed. If a director does something wrong, the shareholders can remove him. Also, the shareholders can receive the dividend. Yeah, very easy. If at the end of the year there is profit in the corporation, it has to be distributed among the shareholders on the basis of their shares. So again, if I have 10%, I only get 10% of that profit. Okay, and these are all customizable in the shareholders agreement. If the shareholder is wound up or dissolved, I can get my share of the corporate property. So if there is 1 million of assets in the corporation and the business is finished, the corporation is dissolved, منحل شد, or wound up by the court, the 1 million left should be first used to pay the debts to other third parties. Then whatever remains there is for the shareholders, again, on the basis of their shares. The shareholders can also inspect the records and receive information. So in order to enhance the transparency, the shareholders can have access, but reasonable access. So a shareholder cannot go to the corporation at, I don't know, let's say 11 p.m. and says, I want to access the records. No, go come back next morning. So they have to have reasonable access to records and receive information. If a shareholder believes that the directors are doing something wrong, they can start a derivative action. Derivative action is a new notion that we don't have it in Iran. So shareholders can start an action against the directors or against a third party when they see that their potential rights are being breached. Okay, so if, let's say, the directors have concluded an agreement which is bad, a shareholder can start a derivative action against the third party that, hey, this contract is abusive, we don't want this. That's a very straightforward example. Yeah, but in order to do that, the shareholder has to prove certain things to the court, and the court has to allow it, that this action can move forward.
Can I ask you a question? Or
sure. If it relates to this specific
power of shareholders. So the question is, in the context of a private corporation, are the shareholders entitled to the right or privilege to sell their shares in a secondary market?
Private, well, they can find a buyer. Yeah, they can find a buyer, but they can't do it in the stock market.
Not the stock market, I mean in the private secondary market. Because there is a trend right now just to exchange the share of the secondary markets. For instance, there's a startup called Hive in Ontario, and they are creating a marketplace to exchange the share of the private corporation. So I'm just wondering how legal it is.
It is legal. Yes, it is legal, but it could run into problems because in some corporations, there are some limitations, some restrictions, either in the articles or in the shareholder agreements that restricts the right to sell. If I have a shareholder, if I have a partner, we own 50-50 in a corporation, and he decides to suddenly sell his shares to another friend whom I don't know, that could be a problem. Because I don't want some stranger showing up in the business and say, hey, from now on, I am your partner. I don't want you as a partner. I want my friend. All right? Sometimes there are some limitations. The law doesn't prescribe any limitation, but in the corporation, the articles, the bylaw, the shareholder agreement, even the share certificate may prescribe some restrictions. And we will get to that in the shareholder agreement. All right, let's move on. Shareholders can disagree. It's a very common phenomenon. You're all aware. You've been there. We just heard an example this morning. Shareholders didn't agree that this account should be opened. Okay, what can we do? First, the law does not prescribe any solution. If, I don't know, 2 or 3 people are in a business and they disagree on a certain thing or certain things, the law does not prescribe or force any one of them to any course of action. Okay? One shareholder says, I want to sell. The other says, no, we have to move on. The other says, no, we have to change the conduct of business. If you get to that point, there is no legal solution to that. Okay? You cannot go to the court and ask the court, force my shareholder to accept the reason. I am saying, I'm talking logic, I'm talking reasonable. He is unreasonable, talk him into my decision. The court doesn't do that for you. Okay? So the court also cannot force a sale. You cannot go to the court and say, please force my shareholder, my partner, to either sell or buy. Sometimes the only solution is that one of the parties buys the other out. But the court cannot do that. The only thing that a court can do is to dissolve the corporation. منحل بشه. برین دنبال زندگیتون. Which is not a very good solution. Sometimes the business has some value in it. You don't want it to be dissolved overnight. Next morning, there's no business, there's no income, there's no revenue. You're done. That's not a good solution. Any one of shareholders can go to the court and ask for a dissolution, which is not a good solution.
Sorry, about the ability of court not to force to sell. It can force to liquidate, right?
Yes.
So
which is dissolving.
Liquidation and
dissolving. Liquidation means dissolving. Means there's nothing left. So the business is dead. Dissolving a business means killing it. There's no business from next day.
So liquidation is not technically sale.
No. Well, it leads to sale. When you dissolve a corporation, the assets should be first used to pay the debts, and whatever is left should be distributed among shareholders. Okay?
I'm sorry, so liquidation doesn't mean that you sell also the value of the business or the value of the brand, no?
Sometimes liquidation is done through sales, sometimes not. Okay. So let's say the sale of the whole let's say the corporation is wound up or dissolved. There are 2 vehicles left, same value attached to each, same value. I take one, my friend takes the other, and we go our ways. Sometimes there is only 1 truck left. So I either have to pay half of it and take it, or we go to the market, sell it, and we split the profits. So liquidation could be done through several types of actions. Could not be just sale. It could be I pay the rest, take it, he takes it and pays me, or we sell it to some third party and split the profits.
There is a code called like shotgun lock.
We'll get there.
Can I rephrase my question? So I meant, say, for example, you have a corporation, you have some customers, right? I don't know, one name, whatever name, like ABC. So is it possible when you liquidate, is it possible that you want to sell the name of ABC and the customers that go with it, for example, to another company?
If
Not liquidation?
no. If the decision is to dissolve the corporation, the name will be dead. All right. Sometimes my friend and I agree to sell the business to a third party and split the shares, split the profits. That's one thing. But if we want the court to dissolve the corporation, the name will be gone. Okay. Now, the solution is simple. Is to agree in advance to avoid the problems that may occur in the future. The shareholders can sit together, sign an agreement that sets out the provisions that will be applied in the future. That is the role of a shareholder agreement. First of all, it's a contract. So again, just the same as corporation versus company, it's just a technical name. Agreement, you may hear it a lot, it's a contract. There's no difference. So in Ontario, they prefer to call it agreement. So what does it do? It sets out the relationship between the shareholders. So we want to have a contract between us to avoid legal problems in the future. Areas that it could cover, how decisions are made. Usually, as I said, decisions are made on the basis of each shareholder's share. 50%, 40%. You raise your hand, yeah, I agree. Your friend raises his hand, I agree. So we're past the 50% threshold, that decision is adopted. Sometimes, if you are a minority shareholder, you could be discriminated against. Let's say you have 30% shares in a corporation, the others have the rest 70, so they can decide against your will. You don't have a say. But in a shareholder agreement, you can decide, you can put a clause in the shareholder agreement that all decisions are made unanimously. That means you get a veto right. Okay, that's a very important thing. So many people, the dominant scheme of a shareholder, a corporation, I could say maybe more than 70% of corporations are usually run by two shareholders. 50-50. That's the dominant scheme. I see other types, but usually I see 50-50. So nobody can decide. Okay? But there is a catch to it. Sometimes people can do some nasty stuff. They can hold a meeting without the other one knowing. The other one is in Iran, is gone abroad, I don't know. So they hold a meeting, there is no enough quorum, حد نصاب نمیرسه. The next meeting, anyone can cast a vote and decide. All right? That's a technical nastiness. But here, in the shareholder agreement, you can stipulate that any decision needs the ratification of both shareholders, or all three of them, or all four of them. Or you can even decide what types of decisions should be made unanimously. I would say important decisions, and I usually, when I draft and customize a shareholder agreement, I customize it, what decisions are called important, sales of business, sales of assets, contracts beyond, let's say 50K, 40K. It's your call. If you think that your partner could do some stuff behind your back, you can put a limit on their behavior. So you can say any transaction beyond 30K needs the unanimous vote of all shareholders. So you're protected. If the guy goes behind your back and does something, as I said, he is a director, he can make a contract. But here you can limit their powers. Okay, what happens if a dispute arises? So the court could not save us, maybe we can save it ourselves. Our friend said, shotgun clause. We'll get there. What happens if one shareholder dies? That's another problem. What if we decide to add a new partner? Or how parties can sell their shares to a third party? These are the usual or the most important areas that a shareholder agreement should touch on. But don't rush, we have a lot to say. Okay, what items are included in a shareholder agreement? The scope of mutual business. As I said, a corporation can do any type of business. Am I running out of time? Okay. Scope of business. I sincerely believe that if two people are putting their monies and efforts to do a business, one of them should not force a change or addition. So you don't want to go to the office and see your partner next day saying, you know what, we're importing this and that. I want to add that line of business too. You're going to say, no, I don't want that. And he's going to insist on his position. No, it's very profitable. It's very good. You can say, okay, you can do it with your own money. I don't want my business to get into this type of exposure. I don't want to expose it to unknown risks. So in a shareholders agreement, you can define the scope. Oh, okay, we are incorporating this business to import bikes from China. Electrical bikes are now a trend. We want to do that. And then your friend comes along and says, you know what, bikes are good. Let's import scooters as well. You're going to say, no. The shareholder agreement says only bikes. And I don't want to do scooters. You want to do it? Go do it. You're on your own. Okay? So the scope of business can be defined, and that could create some sort of exclusion. So one shareholder cannot force the other one into a new venture. Address and particulars of the business. So we go and rent an office. Suddenly my friend comes along and says, let's rent another office. I'm going to say, no, I want this. I don't want to expand. I don't want to do other types of exposures. He's going to insist. Again, the shareholders agreement can save me. I'm going to show him here. See this clause? It says, this is our premiers and this is our business. If you want to do it another branch, I have to consent. Without my consent, you can't do it. That is a very important thing again. How much each party is contributing and will get. Okay, in a shareholders agreement, I usually ask them, how much did you each put? 50-50, 60-40, whatever. And how are you going to get the profits? How are you going to distribute the dividends? That's a very important question. I have seen scenarios that people put 50-50, but because one of them is more experienced, she has demanded 60%, and the other one was agreeable. So any sort of arrangement is fine. Sky is the limit. You can agree on, but the good news is that binds us in the future. If you do not write these things down and you go to the court and you're going to say, yeah, we agreed on this. When did you agree on that? How did you write it? Or how did you execute it? How did you exchange the information? Then you're going to go to text messages showing this and that. That's going to be a problem. Better to write it down. Distribution of responsibilities. That's my favorite area. Usually when I ask this from people, they're going to say, oh, you're right. That's the thing. So better to define the responsibilities. I usually prefer each task to be handled by one person. We don't want two people doing the bookkeeping, doing the sales, managing the staff and everything. That is kind of, that creates problems. Disputes can arise when two people want to do everything all together. But if they divide their tasks, they avoid certain conflicts. It's better to define the tasks if possible. Sometimes it's not possible. But again, as I said, in the context of a restaurant, for example, I noticed that one person is better skilled, well-versed with the cooking, so She became the chef, managing the staff in the kitchen. The other one was a salesperson. So he said, okay, I'm going to take care of the sales and bookkeeping and stuff. And they were happy because they all got what they were better at. If this was not there, they were supposed to do everything together, which is, again, a source of potential problem. Who can sign the contracts? Both parties need to sign. One party can sign up to 30, 40, 50. It can be defined, and it can save us in the future. How to add a new shareholder? So the rule is, if we have 3 shareholders, each owning 33%, the other 2 can issue new shares. So let's say A, B, C. A and B can decide to issue new shares to D. C is going to say, no, I'm not happy. They say, you know what? We're going to do it. 66%. We're in a better place. We're going to do it. But in a shareholder agreement, you can limit this right. You can or restrict this right. There can be a clause saying any addition of a new shareholder should be ratified by all shareholders or should be decided, again, unanimously. That's a kind of important decision because guess what? If they get to add D to the business, your 33 shares is going to dilute. رقیق میشه. Because from that moment onward, you won't be a 33 shareholder. You will be a 25% shareholder. And that's a bad thing for you. So sometimes you prefer that another party should not be added. And this clause in the shareholder agreement can save you. How to sell one's share? The important question. Usually there is no limit, but sometimes the articles, the share certificate, or the shareholder agreement can limit the rights. I have a clause which is about 3 pages in my drafts that sets out the particulars, the real fine prints of how to sell one's shares. My preference usually is that nobody should be allowed to sell their shares without the consent of the other party. That's better. You don't want some stranger showing up in your business. You want to be able to kind of block that transaction. So we have something called preemptive rights. Preemptive rights or right of first refusal can say, okay, my friend, you cannot sell your shares to a stranger. If you want to sell, you have to offer it to me first. Okay? If I refuse to buy, you can go and sell. That's the first stage. Second stage can be the carry along. So I'm going to say, you know what? You offered me your shares. I don't want to buy. Still, you cannot sell to the third party. If the third party wants to buy, he has to buy us both. That could be another scenario to protect you. These are all there to protect one shareholder against some sort of, unilateral decision making. So as I said, preemptive rights, carry along, or piggyback. These are 2 clauses that I usually add to this section to protect each shareholder from a unilateral decision. At the end of the day, important decisions should be made unanimously. Most importantly, drums, shotgun, my favorite. Okay, when it's a forced sale. It's a forced sale, and the most effective way. You may ask why. So let's say there is a dispute, there is a breakdown of the relationship. We cannot resolve this problem with my friend. If we go to the court is going to finally dissolve the corporation, which is, again, not a good idea. So I can do this. What if in the contract we write it, we sign it, that if there is a problem, I can go to my friend and say, okay, In my respective opinion, this corporation is worth 200. Either give me 100, I go, or I give you 100, you go. How does it sound? It should be fair. It should be fair. If my friend believes that 100 is a good price, he's going to get it and go. Because the relationship is gone. The possibility of us working together is gone. One of us has to go. So instead of going to the court and dissolving the corporation, it's better to save it this way. One of us can force a sale. So it's either pay or get. Okay, so I can go to him and say, okay, 200, 100. You have 60 days to decide. Either sell or buy me out. This is the very, very brief description of shotgun. Of course, it takes 2 pages to explain all of these, but yeah, it's a very effective way. There is a pricing mechanism. People sometimes find this arbitrary, best word. Who said 200 is fair? Well, my friend decides if 200, the evaluation of 200 and the 100 offer is fair or not. I don't get to decide. He doesn't get to decide. Usually it's the force of the market. So this mechanism is different from fair market value. A fair market value is determined by an expert, usually a chartered accountant, comes and evaluates everything and assesses everything. But this is a very straightforward and lump sum type of evaluation. It's different from, as I said, fair market value. Usually I try to be conservative when I say that 100, but also I consider other considerations, like how I'm gonna make it easy. Okay, sometimes I just want to get rid of him. So I go to him, I offer something more than market value for him to be lured into the contract and sell, because I want him gone. Or sometimes I want to play some tactical games. I go to him and say, you know what, it's 200 worth, but I'm going to pay you 90. I'm kind of implying, buy me out. I'm going to go. I don't want to stay here. Okay? So the mechanism of pricing is different from fair market value. And the process, I kind of explained that. Okay, event of default. That's again another interesting thing. What is an event of default? If a partner dies, becomes permanently disabled, or becomes bankrupt, or breaches the contract in a very significant way. Of course, Neda, our insurance agent, is kind of interested in the first two. She makes money out of these two. She's the best agent. Okay, so if a party dies, you may say, what's the problem? He died, his heirs are gonna get. No, I don't want my friend's heirs come in and say, hey, we're your new partners. I don't want that. I don't know his wife. I don't know his children. I don't know his brothers and sisters. I don't want them to be in the business. So this could trigger an event of default. Or what if my friend becomes permanently disabled, cannot do anything anymore, cannot help me anymore? Why should I do everything on my own and pay him the dividends and all the shares and profits? Bankruptcy. You don't want your partner to be bankrupt. You don't want it. Trust me. And material breach of contract. What if your partner steals from the corporation? What if he commits a fraud? You don't want them anymore. So any of these events triggers the event of default, and that there is another type of sale mechanism, which is the fair market value. So God forbid, if your partner dies, you can pay the fair market value of his shares to his heirs to block them from entering the corporation. You're going to say, yeah, you very good. It's not a must. You can. It's an option. You don't have to do it, but you have the protection. If you suddenly find out that the widow is not a good person to continue the business with, you can pay them out. But fair market value. There's no shotgun here. You need to engage a third party to assess the corporation, find out how much those shares are worth, and you can pay. In case of bankruptcy, the creditors may want to jump in. And in order to block the creditors of your friend, you can pay them out and block them. Okay. And non-compete, non-solicitation. Non-compete is very important, trust me. I've seen many businesses that one party goes behind the other one, conducts some similar type of business, uses the resources and the information. We are living in the age of information. Your partner has access to the info, to the clients, to all the know-hows, and they go behind your back. They do it a parallel type of business. First, good news. The law prohibits competition by the directors, not the shareholders. So if we are 5 shareholders and we have 3 directors, only those 3 directors are prohibited from competing with the business. Okay? But shareholder agreement can limit or prohibit any sort of competition between all shareholders. So if you're a shareholder in a corporation and you're not a director, usually by the operation of law, you're not restricted from competition. But if the shareholder agreement includes that clause, competition is prohibited. And also you can define the time and geographic ambit. How? Let's say we are shareholders, we don't do any competition. Shareholder agreement, or let's say the corporation is dissolved, from the next day I'm free to compete. Or another scenario, I go to my friend and say, you know what, I'm gonna sell my shares. And he's gonna say, okay, I'm gonna buy it. A very, very friendly decision, we end it. From the next day, I'm no longer a shareholder. Can I compete? There could be a clause that says, even after ending the relationship, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, I don't know, 6 months, you cannot compete. Because the information that you have could be used against the business. I would say 3 years is good. And the geographic area in Ontario, in GTA, in Toronto. Yeah, almost done. And non-solicitation. So it comes into play in 2 scopes of employees. Usually when a shareholder goes away, sells his shares and goes away, usually I've seen the phenomena that this guy steals some of the employees that were connected to him and takes them away. And that hurts the business. In order to avoid that, you can include non-solicitation of employees for 5 years.
In practice, it's very difficult to enforce the non-solicitation clause.
It is difficult, but again, you can have that. Sometimes having that clause prevents it. Trust me.
If everybody has any questions,
let me finish this one. And most important is non-solicitation of clients and customers. That is more important even than employees. I've seen businesses that they get separated, and from the next day, one shareholder or one partner steals all the clients and starts doing business with them. You can limit that here too. I know it's difficult, but again, as a matter of law, sometimes you can find some evidence and sue the guy who will at least stop him from repeating that. Okay, when you have a claim, a valid claim based on a contract, you go to the court, you serve the claim, the other party gets scared, oh my God, he found this one, what if he finds the other ones? Let me stop at least where I was. That could be helpful. And that concludes it. Thank you. Thank you so much.